Hi there, it's Lou and John here. A particular welcome to people who've just joined the site. You'll find that we like to check in regularly. We do audios and post articles as well. You'll see immediately that these aren't scripted, and that's deliberate because we want this to be just us talking to you as if we're sitting across the kitchen table. Thank you too for those involved in our chain of care. The chain of care is supporting each other on this journey. Ways in which you can do that is get on the forum and just respond if people reach out. And obviously you can donate. Every penny that you donate goes into somebody else going through what you go through and being able to access the site in 6 months, 12 months. So that if you invest financially, you're investing in helping somebody like you. That's why we call it the chain of care. Yeah. Remember too, John is available for individual sessions. Yes. He has a very healthy private practice, and he particularly specialises in drinkers and in families, whereas my private practice is much more
much more generic.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So you wrote an article, didn't you, last week?
I did. Yeah.
And I think the kind of heading for this is supporting change in your drinker.
Yeah.
And because John is the drinker, we're kind of going to give him his head, which we may regret later.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a bit generous.
It's his birthday, so we thought we'd give him a special treat.
It's not actually my birthday.
No, we're just kidding. Yeah. So what he's going to do is reflect on really what would be helpful, because you've given up drink, you've lived this, you know what it's like, and every now and then I'm going to chip in.
Sorry about
that. I'm going to chip in because what is helpful may be good for us to do, but we may struggle with some of those things. So I'm going to chip in from time to time, give him the lead, and occasionally reflect back what might be going on in me as a family member.
I think the first thing to start with is that this isn't a problem with one single person. This is, if you're a couple, then it's a couple problem, and hopefully you'll make it a couple recovery. Mm. And the first thing I would say to the drinker is let your partner in, let your partner be part of your recovery, let them help you in it. And really, when I wrote the article last week, I wrote it with that in mind. And that's why today, I want to really sort of talk about it. Last week's was from the drinker point of view, and this week is maybe a wee bit more from the partner point of view. But I'd like to think it's more of a kind of us point of view. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, the first thing, I'll just read out as I'm going along, what I actually wrote last week, not the whole thing, you can read that, just the headings and sort of talk a wee bit about it. And the first one is about know your problem, and along with that is know why you want to change and be clear about your goals. So they are kind of tied up together. And knowing your problem is really, if you don't know what your problem is, then you won't actually change. And I keep telling people this, if you don't really know what the problem is, then you won't change. And your problem in your head might be, I drink too much. That might be how you look at it. If you go and you talk to your partner, they might tell you something slightly different. And for our partners, we actually have a tool called Share. And Share tells you not about how much people drink, but the consequences of the drinking, the impact of that drinking on the family. Mm. And that's really about what your problem is. The problem isn't just the drinking. The problem is the consequences of the drinking. Because as I keep saying to people, there are people who drink loads, but they don't really have a problem because it only happens now and again, and they don't cause any hassles when they do it, and it doesn't cause any hassles to them. It's not about how much you drink. It's not about the frequency of drinking. The problem lies in your relationship with the drinking. Mm. When you can't give it up, when you have problems leaving it alone, even though you're causing lots of problems, that's where the problem actually lies.
And it is quite common, particularly in student life and stuff, and just as you go through life, people they have parties, they have celebrations. It's quite common at that point for the drink to flow, maybe everyone can drink a little bit too much, get a headache in the morning, but it is a kind of a special occasion. But then when drink begins to actually, when every day appears a bit like a special occasion, that's when the problem arises. Can I just say something about share? I think that you'll find as a family of drinker that you've been kind of drip feeding all the different issues in share. You're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing the other. The whole thing about share is you actually sit down and you use a tool, you try to step back from the emotions of it and look slightly more objectively about what is happening and where it's impacting. And so do you share? I think what we would say is don't rush into it the first week you come to the programme. Because you know, share is a tool that you pick up when you understand what it's for, and when you understand that some of the other tools that we give you first are really important. Yeah.
And the other thing I would say is we don't actually use share for drinkers, but you know, have a look at it. You know, if your partner allows you, just have a look at it, because it actually might be quite illuminating for you, you know. So as I say, you know what your actual problem is, and just be well aware of that, you know. So when you're tempted to drink, then you know why you don't want to drink. For me, it was because I hated what I had become, you know. Many people thought it was because I was given 6 months to live. Yeah, that was a factor. But what really helped me to change was when I looked in the mirror, I hated what I saw looking back at me. It was the self-loathing in the drinking that made me want to change. And when I thought about having a drink, I thought, ooh, I'll go back to that. You understand? So I knew exactly what my problem was, and because I knew exactly what my problem was, I didn't want to go back to drinking. And that helps.
I'm nodding here knowingly, but actually it wasn't John that I was living with. I lived with my first husband, but I'm nodding knowingly, really, because I think that's one of the griefs of living with a problem drinker, that when drink comes in, the person that they love, the person they fell in love with, the person they admire, respect, and everything else becomes a different person, and that's a huge, huge loss and grief.
And that's one of the things that we say, you know, that it's like the Jekyll and Hyde thing, you know, that you're spending far too much time with Hyde and you want to spend more time with Jekyll, you know,
So, back to you, as you're going through your list.
Knowing the barriers to change. The barriers to change are what's your temptations, you know, what are the thoughts, what are the conditions, you know, and that brings you on to changing your lifestyle. Because what many people do is they say, oh, right, okay, I'm stopping drinking, but nothing else changes, you know. I'm going to the pub with all my cronies, and I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to drink Coca-Cola and orange juice, you know, with my cronies as they get drunk, and I will not be tempted at all. You know, all I can say is that's nonsense, absolute nonsense, you know. Because if you sit there long enough, there's a saying in AA, you know, if you sit in the barber's long enough, you'll need a haircut. If you sit in a pub long enough, you'll need a drink. And there is a lot of truth to that. And I have to say that in my early days of getting sober, I just stayed well away from pubs, clubs, off sales, anywhere that sold drink. And I stayed away from a lot of people who I thought were my friends. You know, oh, my friends will miss me. Nobody phoned to find out where I was. Nobody came round the door and said, hey, you're not coming out to play. You know, where are you? Nobody did that. Because they were drinking buddies.
But we've talked about this earlier on, isn't it? And I said to you, we talked about, should the partner give up drink when the person who's got a problem with the drink gives up?
This is an old chestnut, and it often comes out. And I think it depends on the situation. You know, if it was me I was the partner rather than the drinker, then I think initially I would not have drink around the house. You know, that would be my what I would think about that. Because I don't really want to put the temptation there, you know, and I think there is temptation when there's drink around the house and you as the partner are sitting there having a drink. I'm just giving up drinking now, you know, and scoffing it. Then particularly if you were their drinking partner.
Yeah, it's not very fair. Yeah, so I think our stance would be, if you could get the drink out of the house or not go to places where there's drinks to start off with, that will give your partner a fighting chance. Now, then I know that you got to the point where you, with your wife at that time, that actually you then could go places and she would drink. and you didn't, and that became manageable.
Oh, absolutely. And as you know, you drink and I don't. You know, and but what I had to what I had to come to the conclusion is that it was me. It was a problem. I had the problem. My wife didn't have a problem with drinking. I had a problem with drinking. Therefore, I can't expect all the pubs and clubs to shut down because I've stopped drinking. That's just nonsense. Therefore, I have to adapt to the world rather than have the world adapt to me.
I have to say two
Much
things.
as I wanted the world to adapt to me.
Yeah, two things I discovered when I married John was that my drinking had really edged up more than I realised. I never got drunk because I was the one who knew that somebody in my first marriage had to be responsible for the kids, and that was me. So actually you may find that I think the weird maths of it for me, if we brought drink in, as long as I drank more of my share or even more of my share, there was less for him to pour down his throat. But that then became a bit of an endemic problem in itself. So actually for you to give up might be interesting if you were drinking, to see just what that level has come up to, and just to make sure that you haven't by mistake colluded and then started having a bit of a problem.
That's what I was meaning earlier on when I was talking about, it depends on the partner's relationship with drinking. There was an old film years ago called The Days of Wine and Roses, and it's become, people talk about it almost as like a syndrome. And in it, sorry?
A classic now, isn't it?
It is a classic, it's an old film, but basically what happened is that the man was a salesman, and he drank, and then he became an alcoholic, and his wife along the way started drinking with him, and the film, you find him, he ended up going to AA, and she's got the problem, so it was, she joined him, and ended up worse than him at the end of it. So it sometimes happens there, and it quite often happens with certainly with drug relationships. You find that there.
The conflict, I think, for us, if I can identify with the partners, is that it just seems to be a perpetual round of loss. And if we enjoy our drink and then our draft gives our drink, there is this feeling, and I used to get it quite a lot. Why does it have to be me? I think I want to get like a banner over my life. Why does that? What you need to keep looking at is the big picture, that you're actually doing it to help him, and actually generally, like with me and John, I do drink. I don't drink to excess at all, do I? And I don't know, mainly holidays when I drink, isn't it now? But
no, you don't drink nearly as much as you used to.
Yeah, so mine's just come a bit into the background. Oh, we need to say, because I was going to say it earlier, from the 25th to the 12th of October, we've bought a little caravan right in the middle of the bottom of Exmoor in England to be able to kind of get away and have time off. And so the thing we haven't got there much is a signal, the internet. It's mid Somerset and Devon in the UK. They're still doing wind-up telephones there. So if you don't hear from us, don't worry. We will be back. We will be at our desk. 12th of October, we're back. So just be aware of that. There'll be 2 weeks.
So if you email us during that time and don't get an immediate reply, that's the reason. We're communing with the sheep in Somerset. Okay, I talked about changing lifestyle, and yes, I agree. That's one of the things that is important, that maybe at the beginning it'd be a good idea to give up drinking, and not have alcohol around the house at the beginning. But eventually, then yes, of course. And as you know, I often ended up the barman at parties and things like that, and it doesn't really worry me because I know what my problem is, and I knew what my goal is. Therefore, I change, and therefore, I don't see that the rest of the world has to change.
Okay, quick question. That's what we don't do. What could we do proactively?
Which is just what I was about to say.
We're so in sync. I get there before him.
So in sync, Thank you for being my memory. Anyway, we were talking about changing your lifestyle, and that's one of the important things about it. I think for me, and I'll talk about my change of lifestyle, is that I sat around in pubs, getting drunk, dreaming the dreams of what I was going to do. Tomorrow, well, it was always tomorrow, it was never today. Tomorrow I'm going to climb the Scottish mountains that are all round about us. Tomorrow I'm going to go walking in the wonderful forests. Tomorrow I'm going to go sailing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the next thing. And sitting in pubs, couldn't do it. Didn't do it. It was always tomorrow. What I did do once I got sober was I did start to do some of these things. I did start to climb the mountains. I did start and sail around the Greek islands. I did start scuba diving. I did start all of these things. And my wife did it with me. We were much, much more together than ever before, and that was really important. And that's the thing. This is why we need to go back to the beginning of this, when I said this is an us. It's an us problem, and it's an us recovery. And it's finding what you like to do together and spending much more time together.
Yeah, and don't panic. You don't have to go mountains or go diving. Maybe you decide to support a particular
That's week 2.
football club, baseball team, and you decide to adopt one. You go and you go do those or go off for
Get
picnics.
A puppy, whatever you like. Go and watch sort of films like Days of Wine and Roses, whatever. That's the other thing. It's a negotiation.
Yes.
It's a negotiation.
Yeah, go back and binge on West Wing. That's what we're going to do. Go back through the West Wing.
Which takes us into the next one, which was about get support. And obviously this is about letting your partner in and the two of you doing this together. You're in it together. This is an us thing. And it's really important that it's an us thing. If you really felt that you couldn't sort of be supported by your partner, or your partner doesn't really support you, then get support elsewhere, But it would be good if you could do it together. That would be fantastic. And one of the things that I'm always telling people is about charting your progress. And I think it's a very simple but profoundly powerful tool. I tell people to get a calendar, put it up in the wall. And it's one of these calendars that's got the whole month, in big squares. That you use it as a kind of a diary calendar type thing. What I've got coming up. All the appointments, etc. And what you do is each day sober, you put a big cross in it. And it's a fantastic visual tool. When you look up there, you go, wow, there's 20 days of crosses. And you get to a whole month, and it's 31 days of crossing. It is a fantastically motivational tool. It really is. But the other thing is, if you're doing that with your partner, then your partner and you know exactly where you are.
I was just going to say a word of warning here, because what he doesn't need is you to turn that into a rule book and kind of look at the squares and kind of imply that he's got to do it. It would be so easy to do that as a partner, There's lots of emotions go on. I think that cynicism, if you've seen this circle, and remember, drinkers go round the circle, but if they're really trying, it's like a descending spiral. It does have an end to the point where they actually follow through. And what you do really, as they kind of try to learn to do a new pattern, is actually quite important. And the temptation to focus on what was and what didn't happen, disappointment. I mean, I've been there now. I really understand that. But even psychologically, focusing on what could be with your partner and believing in that will empower him to change. Keep harking back to what wasn't. Which is so easy to do. So don't hear this as a judgment, because I've been here, I've watched the tries and the falling, and I've watched my heart just, don't talk to me about the fact you're going to give up drinking anymore, because, just do it, and that's a very, very real feeling. But for your own sake and for his sake, to just keep, yes, or her sake, keep believing in the possibility of change. And John is a classic example of a hopeless drunk becoming they say a drunk to a doctor in a decade, becoming a doctor of philosophy. He's got a degree and with what's bigger than that? Masters? What's bigger than that? PhD. PhD, that's the word. Doctorate, yeah. So, we bring hope by just saying we're here. We know this can happen.
Be relentlessly positive.
Yeah.
Which takes us on to the next one. As if by magic, which is if you fall off, get back up.
Yeah.
get back up. Now, going back to our calendar, you know, if you've got all these sort of green crosses and a couple of red ones, then the next month you want all these green crosses and no red ones. And that's the way to look at it. You need to look at the progress. And that's what's really important here. Is there progress being made here? Are there more green crosses than red crosses? If there are more green crosses than red crosses, then there is some progress being made here, you know? And it's to look at it in that way, you know? If this is the first time you've got, 10 days in a row and, you know, okay, you fell down in the 11th. Yeah, it's a shame you fell down in the 11th, but if you're back up and you know, going again on the 12th, then that's good. And as far as partners are concerned, you have to understand that, you know, sometimes there's a lot of false starts in getting sober. You know, think about it yourself. Think about diets that you've been on. Think about exercise regimes that you've been on. Do you still do them, you know? How long did you last with them? Did you fall off them, fall back on them again? And it's very, very similar. Anything you do to change your behaviour, you know, relapse is almost a feature of it.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And it's trying to see it in that way rather than sort of, it's a disaster. You know, it's only a disaster if if the person keeps having fallen down, stays down. You know, and you're only when you fall down, you're only a loser if you don't get back up again.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the getting back up that's the important one, and that's where you can be helpful. You know, rather than the sort of, that's terrible, you did it. You know, come on, you know, you're in there, you're a coach.
Yeah.
You know, think about it as the team. You're get in there. You know, go and get them. So,
I was texting someone I know really well this morning and just saying that I saw them as brave and courageous because I know that they get panic attacks and they still go into work. We face them each day, and maybe she feels she's a bit of a wuss, I don't know, but I feel that she's, you know, such a courageous person because they keep going when things are really, really tough. Can I just say here too, if you're open to that, check out Beauty for Ashes, because for both me and John, secret weapon was the help that God gave us in our particular journeys. I just couldn't have done it without God, I know that. And I think you'd say the same. So we've always been very respectful about that. Beauty for Ashes just tells you our story and the story of how that brought radical change to us and really helped us. And, you know, try to get beyond what you think you might be prejudiced against, because that's the hardest thing when we talk about this. You know, we were very, very reluctant converts, weren't we? Because we've been so put off by it, haven't we?
Yeah, this whole change thing is a sort of it's about opening your mind. You know, it might be opening your mind to sort of spiritual recovery, but it's also about opening your mind to other ways of looking at things.
Yeah.
And you know, and one of the ways of looking at things is progress. You know, because too often people look at it black and white. You know, and that's not really very helpful. I really like AA. I have a great respect for AA, and I think AA saved my life. But there is a problem that I have with AA, and that's you know, if you do 2 years of sobriety and you take a drink, you know, at the end of 2 years, then you're right back to square one again. And I think that just doesn't make any sense. You've got 2 years of sobriety. You should be kind of rewarded, but no, it's either all or it's nothing. Try to not think in that way. Try to think in it as progress. Try to think of it as more sober days than drunk days. You know, and if the following month it's even more sober days and a couple of drunk days, again, it's progress. You know, it's progress all the time.
And remember where you look. I mean, if you came to our house, we've got windows with lots of different views, gardens and things, but we've got one window that looks over the bins, and you know, there's lots of recycling in England, so they're really quite ugly. We try to tuck them around the corner. They exist, and if you look out of the window, you see the bins all the time. But that's not our house, and it's not the view of our life, and so we have to be really careful, particularly when we live with a drinker, is that life becomes one looking out the window and seeing the bins, and the bins are there, but they're just a tiny part of this house. And so look out the windows of where there's positive things, and keep reminding yourself that people change.
The adolescent with a zit.
Yeah, it becomes the biggest thing in its space.
Well, look,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
look at how out on a date and look at my face.
Yeah, and though we say these things colloquially, there's been an awful lot of work done on the mind and neuro, what are they called?
Neurolinguistic.
Yes, and things. But yeah, your brain and what you do with it and where you look is really important to where you end up.
There was a lot of research done years ago in what's called the self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, and it was done mainly for school kids, but it translates to sort of all areas of psychology. And basically it's, you know, if you think this is going to happen, then generally that's what's going to happen. So if you think it's going to be all negative, then very often that's the way it turns out. If you think it's going to be positive, then that's the way it's going to turn out. And it was about the way they treated kids and the way they sort of disciplined kids. You know, if you can try and do it in a positive manner, then yes, they benefit from it. If you try and do it in a negative manner, then it can crush the spirit. And if you crush the spirit, then it can all turn out negative. So it's about trying again to be relentlessly positive if you can.
Yeah.
And so number 9 was just keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going. You know, this is change doesn't happen overnight. It's a kind of, it's more of a marathon than it is a sprint. And you have to remember that, you know, just so keep going. And the last one is about rewarding yourself. Now, one of the things that, I mean, if you're not, people are not drinking, then they're saving a lot of money. You know, how much does it cost for a bottle of vodka, or, you know, a case of beer, or, you know, a case of wine, or whatever? You know, think about that. And one of the things that I decided to do when I got sober was I loved music. I still love music, you know, and I wanted a really good system to play it on. So my reward to myself was I was going to buy a hi-fi. You know? Now, I freely admit that I am sort of lost in the past with vinyl records and things, you know. Well, love it, vinyl records.
Well, they're contemporary now, darling.
Yeah, no, it's all of a sudden I'm in style again.
Yeah.
Hey, happens every 50 years, I become in style, you know. You can see that, you know, obviously. COVID is the long hair again.
Oh, yeah, don't even talk about that.
Yeah. So, that's what I did. I saved up my money and I went out and I bought myself a really good hi-fi, you know, which I still have today. Fantastic. I love it. For you, it might be a trip to Disneyland for the kids, you know. It might be that new kitchen. It might be whatever floats your boat. It doesn't matter. It gives you something to look forward to. It becomes another goal. So it's not just about knowing your problem. It's knowing what the reward might be at the end of that as well. You know, and it's, you know, people are motivated by good and bad things. You know, and the longer you remain sober, the more you are motivated by the good things about being sober rather than the bad things about having to get sober. You know, it's that maintains it. It's quite the opposite of drinking. You start drinking because of the good things that you're going to get, and you continue to drink because of the bad things when you're not drinking. You know, when you get sober, it's exactly the opposite. You get sober because of the bad things that are happening, and you stay sober because of the good things and the fact that you could even lose them. You know, and that's important. But reward yourself, because it's
not
a big
with the
task.
drink. Don't be tempted.
Oh, clearly not a drink.
Oh, I'm all right
Clearly
now.
not a drink. Yeah.
Yeah.
But other things, and you know, if you can reward yourself with something for the family, it becomes even better. You know, because again, remember, you're in this together. This isn't a solo effort. You know. Getting sober is not a solo effort. You might be able to do it, but it's very, very difficult. And most people will fail if it's a solo effort. So get the support.
Yeah.
Make sure it's, you know, your family is in there supporting you, that they know what's going on, they know why you want to do it, they know what your goal is, you know, they know what the reward is at the end of the day, and you can change your lifestyle to be with them even more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it.
Yeah.
That's me.
Good. That's very good. Yeah, I think on our heart to do, the one thing we would like to add to this website is a little section on recovery. Because there is a complicated set of emotions that goes on in the family member. Yeah. And one of the hardest triggers is, as someone gets sober, they expect the partner to be over the moon, and they kind of are, but there's a whole basement of unprocessed emotions and anger
absolutely.
that begins to come up. So that actually can be quite tricky, and we're aware that people don't always understand that. So we kind of want to unpack that a bit, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, there's only a certain amount of time, you know, so it becomes, it sounds slightly simplistic when you say it that way, you know, you just support your person, but this person has caused you havoc for years,
Absolutely.
and, you know, and there's all these emotions, but sometimes you've got to bury them for a wee while, you know, there will come a time.
Yeah.
The time will come when you will be able to express some of these, you know, maybe not in the way that you think at this moment in time, but you will be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, and again, that's part of what recovery is about. You know, part of recovery is not just about one person. Recovery is about the family.
So, you know, we drop things in and we do things like this, but we are aware there's a lot of complicated emotions around it, and it is our desire to kind of unpack that a little bit more before we feel that this is a completed work. That's the kind of bit. I suppose we need to finish now because we usually try and keep this a bit shorter. But
I've got no idea how long this is, but I've got a feeling that people have been to bed and back up again now.
So thank you for still here.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying with us.
Was your holiday nice? Sorry about that. I sort of went a wee bit, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, so thank you for listening. You are important to us. Your journey is important to us.
Yeah.
We believe utterly in change. But we know you need to hang on in there. Don't be tempted to skip the first bit of the program if you're a family member, you know, particularly a partner. You need to kind of figure out how to care for you before the energy, because you'll put an awful lot of energy into things you don't really need to do. So just stick with the program. It's in its particular order for purposes.
Yeah, it was done in excuse me. It was done in that order for a reason.
For you,
know.
Yeah.
And it's the first bit is all about, you know, empowering you, and the second part is about, you know, trying to change your drink habit.
Yeah, and
that's what it's. That's
open up the forum. Come and talk to us. You know, and thank you for listening to us. It's lovely to talk to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.